The President's statement of support for Georgia at this dangerous time is of critical importance, not only to the Georgian people, but to all countries that are closely monitoring Russian activities and action. I welcome President Sarkozy's mediation and that of the European Union. I am concerned that the ceasefire agreement omitted any reference to Georgia's territorial integrity. And it's clear that Russia is continuing military operations against Georgian targets despite the agreement, including in areas far from South Ossetia. I'm deeply disturbed by reports of looting, burning villages, and killings of civilians that are in areas under Russian control. Anyone committing human rights abuses or acts in violation of the laws of war should be held accountable. At a time of high energy prices and instability in global markets, it's important to understand that events in Georgia, part of a strategic energy corridor, affects lives, individual lives, far beyond the Caucasus. Because of the fighting, the Baku-Supsa oil pipeline has been shut down at a time when the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline is also closed. Those pipelines are critical for transporting oil from sources in the Caspian to points west. The United States has canceled a planned joint military operation with Russia, but we will now need to review the full range of our relations. With our NATO allies, we must address the future of the alliance's relationship with Russia, and with our G7 partners, we should discuss whether it makes sense for Russia to continue its participation in the G8. We'll also need to review Russia's aspiration for membership in the World Trade Organization. In addition, I urge discussions about an international peacekeeping operation, including canvassing nations for possible contributions to such a force. NATO should also begin anew the discussions about a membership track for both Georgia and Ukraine. After the events of the past 6 days, no one should wonder why countries on Russia's periphery so ardently seek the security guarantees alliance membership represents. The situation in Georgia remains fluid and dangerous, and as soon as possible, my colleagues, Senator Lieberman and Senator Graham, will be traveling. They're both to Georgia. They're both members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I hope that other members of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate and they will go together and receive an assessment of the situation and what we need to do in the future to avoid further escalation and also to protect the independence and freedom of the people of this brave democratic ally, the country of Georgia. Thank you. Ed?
Senator, good afternoon. Given the events around Georgia, do you think there ought to be heightened security arrangements for Ukraine, for the Baltic states, and even Poland?
Yes, I do, and one of the really most heartening aspects of this situation was the visit by 5 presidents of these countries who have all to Tbilisi, who all have one thing in common. They've all lived under Russian domination. And so, yes, I believe that we have to do what we can to reassure other nations in the region that we will try to assist them in maintaining their independence and recognize that this action by Russia against Georgia may not, although hopefully it is isolated, may not be, but I hope is isolated.
Senator,
Yeah. Sorry.
An advisor
we'll bring the microphone.
An advisor to Senator Obama last night said that your comments about the situation there in South Ossetia and Georgia, at least initially, were aggressive, belligerent, and may have complicated matters. I'd like to get your response to that, and also the notion that your tough position on Russia may tend to make them less cooperative in the future instead of more cooperative.
First of all, this isn't a time for partisanship and sniping between campaigns. This is about hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent people whose lives are even being taken, or they're rendered homeless, wounded. This is no time for that, to start with. Second of all, if I may be so bold, there was another president. At one time, there was a president named Ronald Reagan who spoke very strongly about America's advocacy for democracy and freedom. He was criticized at that time. I've been to Georgia on several occasions. I know the president of Georgia, President Saakashvili. I know him well. I know the people of Georgia have enjoyed an unprecedented period of prosperity and freedom. And I know that at this time they are suffering mightily. So maybe later on in the campaign, let's have a back and forth about whose comments or statements. But now, let's devote all of America and our allies' energy to helping resolve a situation which is fraught with human tragedy. Yes, sir.
Senator.
Here's a microphone.
Thank you, Senator. In light of that comment, and frankly one that you said yesterday in our interview, I'd like to ask you to sort of clarify a distinction between yourself and what Senator Lieberman, and perhaps you'd like to respond to this too, said yesterday in Teaneck, New Jersey, when he compared your initial statements and said, and I quote, Barack Obama and John McCain's statements, Senator Lieberman said, one had kind of a moral neutrality to it. That comes, I think, from inexperience. The other, Senator McCain, was strong and clear. That seems a little political to you, to some, no?
Well, let me respond by just saying that I think that whatever we think at the moment, that we can all reserve that for a future time. And I think judgments will be made about how we handle this situation, how we approach the situation in Iraq, and how much experience and knowledge and background means in selecting the American people's decision as to who should be the next commander-in-chief. So all I can say is there'll be plenty of time for that, and we'll move forward with it. Yes, sir. Either one, it doesn't matter.
Senator, I'll follow.
It always matters, but
I'll follow up on Ed's question, and that is, you said that heightened security for the Baltic states and Poland might be in order. Could you talk a little bit more about what